Gerald says, "Where?" Charles says, "In Every Street. The police stated that at the time of the accident, Mr. Piper was being pursued by a patrol and was traveling at the rate of 66 miles an hour. When asked why he did not stop when signaled by the police car, he said, 'I thought you were having a game with me.'" And it sounds like something people would say when they're drunk, but Gerald says, "This is what the communists make capital out of." Charles says, "There's a little more. The Piper family. No, we needn't read that." Violet says, "This is just what I expected, but if Agatha is going to moralize about it, I shall scream." Gerald says, "It's going to be awkward explaining this to Amy," Ivy said. "Poor Arthur. I'm sure that you're being much too hard on him." Charles says, "In my time, these affairs were kept out of the papers, but nowadays, there's no such thing as privacy." Well, privacy or not, the mentioning of what might be considered evil for entertainment's sake is certainly an issue. And the chorus. "In an old house there's always listening, and more is heard than is spoken, and what is spoken remains in the room, waiting for the future to hear it. And whatever happens began in the past and presses hard on the future. The agony in the curtained bedroom, whether of birth or of dying, gathers into itself all the voices of the past and projects them into the future. The trembling voices on the lawn, the mowing of hay in the summer, the dogs and the old pony, the stumble and the wail of little Pain, the chopping of wood in autumn, and the singing in the kitchen, and the steps at night in the corridor, the moment of sudden loathing, and the season of stifled sorrow, the whisper, the transparent deception, the keeping up of appearances, the making the best of a bad job, all twined and tangled together, all are recorded. There is no avoiding these things, and we know nothing of exorcism, and whether in Argos or England, there are certain inflexible laws, unalterable in the nature of music. There is nothing to do about anything, and now it is nearly time for the news. We must listen to the weather report and the international catastrophes. Scene 2, Harry and Agatha. And, oh, maybe there's only going to be them in this one. But in the other one, they had other... No, okay. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have. Harry says, "John will recover. Be what he always was. Arthur again be sober, although not for very long. And everything will go on as before. These mild surprises should be in the routine of normal life at Witchwood. John is the only one of us I can conceive as settling down to make himself at home in Witchwood. Make a dull marriage. Marry some woman stupider than himself. He can resist the influence of Witchwood, being unconscious, living in gentle motion of horses and right visits to the right neighbors at the right times, and be an excellent landlord," Agatha says. "What is in your mind, Harry? I can guess about the past and what you mean about the future, but a present is missing needed to connect them. You may be afraid that I would not understand you. You may also be afraid of being understood. Try not to regard it as an explanation." Harry says, "I still have to learn exactly what their meaning is. At the beginning, 8 years ago, I felt at first that sense of separation, of isolation, irredeemable, irrevocable, it's eternal, or gives a knowledge of eternity, because it feels eternal while it lasts. That is one hell. Then the numbness came to cover it. That is another. That was the second hell of not being there. The degradation of being parted from myself, from the self which persisted only as an I, seeing all this last year, I could not fit myself together. When I was inside the old dream, I felt all the same emotion, or lack of emotion as before, the same loathing. Diffused, I, not a person, in a world not of persons, but only of contaminating presences. And then I had no horror of my action. I only felt the repetition of it. Over and over. When I was outside, I could associate nothing of it with myself. Though nothing else was real, I thought foolishly that when I got back to Wishwood, as I had left it, everything would fall into place. But they prevent it. I still have to find out what their meaning is. Here I have been finding a misery long forgotten and a new torture, the shadow of something behind our meager childhood, some origin of wretchedness. Is that what they would show me? And now I want you to tell me about my father. Agatha tells Harry. What do you want to know about your father? Harry says, if I knew, then I should not have to ask. You know what I want to know, and that is enough. Warburton told me that, though he did not mean to. What I want to know is something I need to know. And only you can tell me. I know that much, Agatha says. I had to fight for many years to win my dispossession, and many years to keep it. What people know me as, the efficient principal of a women's college, that is the surface. There is a deeper organization, which your question disturbs, Harry says. When I know that in some way I shall find that I have always known it. And that will be better, Agatha says. I will try to tell you. I hope I have the strength, Harry says. I have thought of you as the completely strong, the liberated from the human wheel. So I look to you for strength. Now I think it is a common pursuit of liberation, Agatha says. Your father might have lived, or so I see him, an exceptionally cultivated country squire, reading, sketching, playing on the flute, something of an oddity to his country neighbors, but not neglecting public duties. He hid his strength behind unusual weakness, the diffidence of a solitary man. Where he was weak, he recognized your mother's power and yielded to it. And Harry says to Agatha, there was no ecstasy. Tell me now, who were my parents? Agatha says, your father and your mother. Harry says, you tell me nothing. Agatha says, the dead man whom you have assumed to be your father and my sister whom you acknowledge as your mother. There is no mystery here. Harry says, what then? Agatha says, you see your mother as identified with this house. It was not always so. There were many years before she succeeded in making terms with Wishwood, until she took your father's place and reached the point where Wishwood supported her and she supported Wishwood. At first it was a vacancy, a man and a woman married alone in a lonely country house together, for 3 years childless, learning the meaning of loneliness. Your mother wanted a sister here, always. I was the youngest. I was then an undergraduate at Oxford. I came once for a long vacation, I remember, a summer day of unusual heat for this cold country, Harry says. And then? And Agatha says, there are hours when there seems to be no past or future, only a present moment of pointed light. When you want to burn, when you stretch out your hand to the flames, they only come once. Thank God that kind. Perhaps there is another kind, I believe, across a whole Tibet of broken stones. Where's that Tibet? That lie, fang up in a lifetime's march. I have believed this, Harry says. I have known